Okay, so to wrap up what we were going to do together in class, I went through the Edpuzzle videos, and for the most part, everybody got the fundamental period and the amplitude is correct. The biggest mistake that students made, they looked at the highest y value is 2, the lowest y value is -1, and then just did 2 minus 1 divided by 2 and told me that the amplitude was 1/2. The rule is you have to subtract the lowest value from the greatest value, okay? Okay, I got a lot of different answers when I asked you to find these function values, but let me go over again how to do these. Too many of you got them incorrect, okay? So we know that the period is 4, so that means my y values are going to repeat. The length of the cycle is 4 units. So 45 divided by 4, that goes in 11 times with a remainder of 1. Some of you left the notes as exactly this, 11 remainder 1. Some of you in Edpuzzle told me this. That's exactly correct, but I actually need an output. Okay, so what's my y value? Because this is my function notation for tell me the output when the input is 45. So f of 1 from my graph has a y value of 2. So all of these things I need to get there, but my final answer has to be a y value from the graph. All right, 75 divided by 4. This goes in 18 times with a remainder of 3. Okay, so f of 75 would be equivalent to f of 3. That is correct. But I need an actual output, 1, 2, 3. So the answer should have been -1. So on Edpuzzle, I only gave you 100 if you got all 4 of these answers correct. Okay, so do not fret if you got a 0 on that. All right, let's continue with these function values. We can find them if our input is negative. Okay, so -20 divided by 4, that goes in an even amount of times with no remainder. So f of 0 from my graph, f of 0 is equal to 0. Okay, 10 divided by 4, that goes in 2 times with a remainder of 2. So f of 10 would be equal to f of 2. And when I look on my graph, f of 2 has an output of 0. Okay, now -31. So let's do this by hand. Oops. Let me remind you, when you are dividing numbers, when you're dividing integers, your remainder has to be positive. Okay, so if you were to think that this goes in -7 times, -7 times 4 is -28. Divide, multiply. On my subtract step, this gives me a remainder of -3. Okay, so when you divide, you have to make sure that whatever the product is actually smaller than the dividend. -8 times 4 is -32. When I subtract that, it actually becomes -31 plus 32, so that gives me a remainder of 1. Okay, so this will equal f of 1. From my graph, f of 1 is equal to 2, so that would be my final answer. So -5 times 4 is -20. -20 is not smaller than -22. So -6 times 4 is -24. When I subtract that, I get a remainder of 2. So f of -22 is equal to f of 2. From my graph, we use that one again. F of 2 is equal to 0. So you will be practicing more of these, okay? All right, this is what I need you to know from lessons 4.3 and 4.4, okay? Period and amplitude. You have to be able to identify the period and amplitude from an original graph. You have to be able to determine function values that are not graphed. And you have to be able to identify the period and amplitude from vertical and horizontal transformations, okay? So when we dilate the figure, so depending on if it's a vertical dilation or a horizontal dilation, they'll affect the period or amplitude. Okay, and those are in your notes here. Okay, so that's what I mean on these general notes that I gave you. So let me remind you that every assessment you take is open notebook. So this slide here sort of keeps everything together, but you have your notes that you're able to always go back to. Okay, your different types of transformations. A translation is a slide. Okay, so remember we move horizontally. Oops. According to the opposite value of h, vertically it stays the same. That's the value of k. Vertical stretch or shrink. Okay, my vertical axis is my y-axis. The y-axis goes up and down. So when my multiplier is on the outside of my function, that is dilating vertically. If that number is between 0 and 1, it's a vertical shrink. If that number is greater than 1, it's a vertical stretch. Okay, horizontal dilations. We dilate horizontally if we take our value of x that's inside the parentheses and multiply it by a number. Let me remind you that these are reciprocals. So if c is a number between 0 and 1, so if c is like 1/2, that's actually a horizontal stretch. So we're taking the ends of the graph, the left and the right, and we're stretching the graph out. If my multiplier is a number bigger than 1, it's a horizontal shrink. So it's like we take the left and the rightmost points of the graph and shrink them together like an accordion. All right, reflections, this was on your last quiz, but when my negative sign is out front of f of x, that's a reflection over the x-axis. If my negative sign is inside the set of parentheses, that's a reflection over the y-axis. Okay. Okay, so for each function, determine the transformation applied. So my parent function is y is equal to f of x. I don't know what the graph looks like. I don't know if it's periodic. All I want you to be able to do is look at a rule, look at an equation, and tell me what's happening. So when I look at this, there's only one thing being added to my original function. So if I'm adding on the outside, it's a vertical translation. So I want to see what it is. And what it is, I mean, is it a translation? Is it a vertical dilation, a horizontal dilation, or a reflection? And then how we move in. We're moving up 1 unit. Okay, so whatever my parent function looks like, whatever's graphed, I'm taking it and I'm translating it up 1. I'm sliding it up 1. Okay, so let me, on number 2, 1, 2, 3, and then there's 4 things happening to this, 4 different transformations. So let's sort of move left to right. What does the negative on the outside mean? I don't know. I forget. Let me come back here. A negative on the outside means I reflect over the x-axis. So first, reflection over the x-axis. Next, I just want you to identify what the value of c is and tell me if it's vertical or horizontal, stretch or shrink. How do I do that? I come back over here. My multiplier is on the outside of my function. My multiplier is a number between 0 and 1, so it's a vertical shrink. Next, in the blue highlighter, I have a -4. Okay, when I'm adding and subtracting values, that's a translation. I have to go to the opposite. I'm translating the x's, so it's a horizontal translation. 4 units to the right. Okay, because the minus sign in the parentheses actually tells me it's a movement to the right. The +2 on the outside, that means I'm sliding horizontally. That means, I don't know what I just tried to say. I'm sliding vertically, vertical translation, and I'm going 2 units up. So every single thing that is in addition to just the y and the f of x, you have to understand that that tells me some type of transformation that's happening. So green was that one, and then yellow. And then over here, we just had the one transformation happening. All right, so when I look at this guy, I have a negative inside the parentheses. I have a multiplier of 4 inside the parentheses. And then I'm adding 4 on the outside. Okay, so to identify, moving left to right, I see a negative sign inside my set of parentheses, so that's a reflection over the y-axis. Okay, next I have a multiplier of 4, but what does that mean? My multiplier is on the inside, so it's a horizontal dilation. My multiplier is a number bigger than 1, so it's actually a horizontal shrink. And then my plus 4 on the outside, that means it's a vertical translation. And it's a vertical translation of 4 units up. Okay, so again, every single piece that is in addition to just the y equals f of x tells us that some type of transformation is happening to the graph. Okay, so I am going to post this as an assignment with one other thing for you to be able to work on. Thank you.